Hi, my name is Jerry. I'm a compulsive overeater, and I'm so grateful to be here and to share how coming back after relapse and learning to practice the two-way prayer has changed my life like I've never been changed before. Through this journey, I have found a real relationship with God, a new connection in the steps and in the tools, and a newfound honesty and surrender, and a peace that I never thought was possible. And I wanted to come from my authentic self because when I was eating compulsively, there was no me being authentic about myself. So I'll share a little bit what it was like. When life became large, I've been abstinent again for three plus years. When life became large, I thought that the geographical cure was my answer. If I could just change my present situation, my surroundings, then maybe I'd finally be okay. But no matter where I went, I brought myself with me and I brought my disease with me. I was restless. I was fearful. I was full of what is. What if I fail? What if people see the real me? What if I can't stop eating? I wanted that control over everything people, outcomes, even God. And when I stopped turning to God, when I was in my present situation, and that was I had a routine rotator cuff surgery and my shoulder was over surgery, and it left me partially paralyzed in my left hand, my shoulder, my arm. And so, I thought that, if I went to another part of OA, that would cure this. And I went to that other part of OA and I, started working the program. And the gift of that is God never left me alone. I mean, God was coming to me on a weekly basis, a daily basis, telling me, Jerry, you need to go back home. And he meant to the OA 90 community. And so when I was in that other fellowship, the disease is funny. It crept back quietly, one realization at a time, rationalization, one bite at a time. And eventually I was in relapse. And the sponsor that I had at that time, I remember going to her and I said to her, I'm not going to weigh and measure my food anymore. And she started laughing, and she wasn't laughing at me, she was laughing with me because she knew I was a OA 90 person. And she said to me, are you sure, Jerry? She said, because you are really a OA 90 person. And she said, I'm learning a lot from you. So, at that point, I kept on trying to work that program. I felt disconnected from God, disconnected from OA. And I was caught up in the self pity and, everything that went along with me losing a lot of independence because I wasn't able to do um, certain things. But again, I stress that God never left me alone. He always whispered to me, Jerry, you got to go back home. And so it was the end of August of that year that I came back, broken, humbled, couldn't stop eating. But there was a newfound willingness that I had. And that was the moment that my recovery really started. So what happened is, and I thought about this last night. I said, what really happened? When I came back, I knew that I couldn't rebuild on self-will. I couldn't come back doing what I had did before. And I needed a new foundation, one built on God. Like I really needed to deepen my relationship with God and simply take action, and I had to get to a new place of responsibility and accountability. So, what really happened is there were two gentlemen of OA 90 that kept on announcing this program that they were leading every other month, and it was called Back to Basics. And they were doing it consistently. So, what I did is I joined. back to bases. And each time they did it, every other month, I would be right there with them month after month. And I sat in those sessions and I heard the same simple message week after week after week. Trust God, clean house, help others. And each time I went through the steps, something new reached me. It wasn't about learning more, it was about going deeper within myself, going to a deeper relationship with God. And through that consistency, my foundation began to strengthen. I stopped trying to fix myself and started letting God work through me. And it was in one of those back to back basis sessions that I first heard about the two-way prayer. Well, I heard about it before because there was a friend in program that said she was doing it. But I really connected to it by being in the back to back basis with these two gentlemen. And I want to say that these two gentlemen every other month embraced me in a way that I had never been embraced and walked me through those steps. And, and at that time, I had consistently started doing my quiet time again. I started talking to God. I started listening. My sponsor, I went to my sponsor and I said, there's something to this back to basis. And she said, well, keep doing it. So what I did is again, like I said, I signed up every other month when they were doing it. And, I would do it with them. And then eventually one of the gentlemen asked me to start leading the meetings also. So, I would talk to God, I would listen. And, I started doing this two-way prayer. I would write down what I thought God wanted me to hear. At first, I wasn't sure. I have to honestly, be honest about. I wasn't sure I could hear anything except my own thoughts. But I showed up each morning anyway. And, I prayed, God, please show me what you have me to know today. And then I waited. That's how I started doing two-way prayer. And slowly the words just started to flow. They became, you're not alone. That's one of the biggest things that I got out of doing two-way prayer is that, I'm not alone. Stay close to me, Gerry. And one of the things I also learned is to do the next right thing. And what is the next right thing? I wasn't just believing in God, I was experiencing God. And prayer became the way I lived, like this 11th step, improving my conscious contact with my higher power, who I choose to call God. And it taught me that guidance is real. The guidance I get from my sponsor, the guidance I get from God, the guidance I get through the steps, through the tools. And that voice of God became very gentle, where I like embraced it. And that peace that I thought I would never get back to became. So through the back to bases and the two-way prayer, I learned a lot about surrender. And, and for me, this time I learned that surrender wasn't about me giving up. It was about me handing over my life, this left side. And, and when I hand my life over to God, peace always follows. And it did. It's like I am experiencing the peace that I have never had in this program. And I've been in Overeaters Anonymous for 37 years. And a lot of you guys on this meeting knows me. And, so where did the miracle start when I started two-way prayer? And I have to honestly say, I was a real high person with perfection. And that two-way prayer broke that down and it started to wash my ego. And I got to another place of willingness. So, what is it like today? I live in hope today. Like, even though I have this partial paralyzed side, it's amazing what I can do today. Um, and today, every morning I start my day with God. That's the one thing that I am so excited about every morning is I get to talk to the one that loves me the most. And then I do my quiet time. I don't do two-way prayer every day. I do it Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And that's what works for me. And so, you know, when I do two-way prayer, you know, um, sometimes I write pages, sometimes I just write a few lines, but every time I do that writing, I'm able to connect with God. And, I have to emphasize that the steps and the tools have really kept me grounded over these last 3 years in being back in the, program. And my sponsors, I work with a Big Book Step Study sponsor, a food sponsor, and an Al Anon sponsor. And they keep me accountable. They remind me that I am 70 years old now. I am not 13 when the trauma hit my life. And, I haven't did back to basics because it hasn't been, the times haven't been available for me in Eastern time, but I still practice what I learned through going through the back to basics meetings consistently. And I keep doing the two-way prayer. So when I started to write on my fears, my resentments, or when doubt showed up through the two-way prayer, I learned how to practice the pause. And when things come up in my life today, I practice that pause. I ask God, what is yours, what is mine, and what is not mine? And God always answers. And when I get those answers, peace follows. Spiritually, I've come to know a loving, patient God. When I grew up, I had that God that, everybody threatened me with. Like, if you don't be a good girl, God's going to get you. If you don't go to church, God's going to get you. And my faith community is a big part of my recovery today. I need that in my recovery. So, I'm grateful that I don't have a punishing God. Emotionally, when I was working with a emotional sobriety sponsor for a couple of months, and I learned a lot about acceptance of myself and to be honest. Like, I can be honest today. And physically, I have found that I no longer have to be in this program and be underweight because a lot of years in this program, I was underweight and I was very unhealthy, but I didn't see that. That's the part of the disease that I never really worked on because I got a hit on being underweight. And so, I no longer need that geographical cure. I'm home because I found a spiritual one. I have found a spiritual cure for myself, and that is God, this program. I no longer am driven by fear. And that's one of the things is like I remember when I came back to the 90-day program and got abstinent, I got on my knees 2 times, and one of them is I surrendered my life to God. And I got back on my knees and I said to God, if you don't heal me from the fear that I have around people, places, and things, I am going to literally die. And from that day on, God has healed me from that fear. It is possible to be healed if you believe. And so, I'm no longer driven by fear and I'm no longer controlled by fear. And one of the things through my emotional sobriety work that I did, I had to learn how not to attach myself to everything that is said to me, everything that is done to me, or everything that I believe that I needed to attach myself to be, my authentic self. So through working the Back to Basics program, it brought me to a beautiful place of newfound faith and surrender. And I can honestly say today I live in hope, not because my life is perfect. Life still goes on, and I can knock on wood to say everything's okay today. But because I know I'm not alone, that God walks with me, and I do this program one day at a time. And two-way prayer, to hear God's voice. I think when I was out there suffering and trying to do it my way, one of the things I missed so much about uh, recovery is I didn't hear God's voice. And today I hear God's voice and I hear my voice. And that's the peace where I wanted to come to. So, the fellowship gave me a place to heal, and I'm so grateful I'm back here. And the peace I found, the quiet, steady peace that I have in my life today is the greatest gift. Me and my husband was driving somewhere a month ago, and he looked over at me. He said, "Gerry, what changed? Like, what changed?" And I was able to tell him what changed. So, what I have to say in closing, if anyone is struggling or coming back from relapse, please hear this. God hasn't left you. Like God never left me when I left the OE90 program. The same God that restored me can restore you back too. And it starts small. So I keep coming back. I use the tools, I use the steps. I'm very honest with my sponsor. I'm very honest with people because I don't have that fear of not being good enough anymore. And for me, it started simple, back to basics, writing, listening, and letting God come to me. And I have to honestly say, there's no right or wrong way to do the two-way prayer. Just be willing, just be honest and just be open, and God will meet you where you are. So I just want to close with this. The other day, I had something on my mind, and I picked up the pen and I picked up the paper, and I said to God, God, I think I need a best friend. I really think I need another best friend. And God put down on that paper for me, He said, Gerry, I have given you your best friend back, and that's you. And you being back in this program is where you belong, and you have your best friend. And that's me, you, your husband, this fellowship, your abstinence, and the peace that you have today. So I am so grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be abstinent. I am so grateful that the women in the workshop committee embraced me when I joined them. And I'm so grateful that we are able, as a we, to put these workshops together. I'm Gerry, a grateful abstinent food addict. Thank you for letting me share my authentic self with you today because this is who I am. Thank you.